listening to today, meeting number 31. So I'd like to welcome you all to meeting number 31 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure, and Communities. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25th, 2021. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you are all aware, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. To ensure an orderly meeting, a few points I'd like to make. First off, members and witnesses may speak in the official language of your choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting, and you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. For members participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the committee is meeting all in person in a committee room. Keep in mind the directives from the Board of Internal Economy regarding masking and health protocols. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourselves. Those in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal by the Proceedings and Verification Officer. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed to the chair. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. With regard to a speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do our very best, to maintain the order of speaking for all members, whether they be participating in virtually or in person. Members, pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on October 29, 2020, the committee will now continue its study of targeted infrastructure investments. I would now like to welcome, as well as introduce our witnesses for today. First, we have from the City of Corner Brook, Mayor Jim Parsons. Jim, welcome back. City of Sept-Îles, Réjean Pollier, Mayor, once again. Mr. Mayor, welcome back. From the Hamilton Oshawa Port Authority, we have Ian Hamilton, the President and Chief Executive Officer. And finally, from the Insurance Bureau of Canada, we have Craig Stewart, Vice President, Federal Affairs. So with that, I'm going to start off with Mr. Parsons, Mayor Parsons. Mayor Parsons, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the committee for providing me the opportunity to speak to you today on behalf of the people of Corner Brook. Federal infrastructure funding is of immense importance to our community. And before I speak about the specifics of our situation as a municipality, I'd like to mention one notable recent project in our community. Corner Brook was founded on the development of our pulp and paper mill almost 100 years ago. We're now a modern government services center for the west coast of Newfoundland, with a campus of Memorial University and a burgeoning tourism sector. That said, our paper mill is still uniquely important to our community and our regional economy. Now, we have a deep water port here in the city, and for many years it was underutilized for industrial purposes. But 2 years ago, we were able to secure funding through the National Trade Corridors Fund to purchase container handling equipment, including a new crane. This enabled us to attract a new international container service to the port, which would have our mill as an anchor tenant. So when COVID-19 hit last spring, the newsprint market, of course, in the US disappeared almost overnight. This was a disaster for our mill. However, our investment in our port saved the day. Container service commenced in May 2020, allowing our mill to reach new markets, support a more diversified client base, and reduce shipping costs overall. Our mill prevailed against the initial impacts of COVID-19, out surviving many global competitors. This success is largely due to a relatively small $5.5 million investment from the federal government. And I'd like to thank MP Goody Hutchings for her support on this file. Now, as a city of approximately 20,000 people, we're able to sustain our operations through responsible fiscal management. However, we rely on federal and provincial partners for help when it comes to the development and maintenance of our extensive municipal infrastructure. Now, each year we fund our infrastructure development primarily through the following sources: provincial multi-year capital funding, the gas tax, of course, ISIP, and ad hoc funds through Infrastructure Canada, like the new Health Canada Healthy Communities Initiative, and programs through ACOA and FCM. We typically use our multi-year provincial funding and our gas tax funding on our must-haves or our can't-wait projects, like water and sewer upgrades, road investment repair. ISIP and other funds are used typically for bigger projects or nice-to-have projects. Since we can't count on any specific project getting funded through those ladder streams, we either have to tolerate potential delays on those projects or have backup funding. We've experienced a few challenges with an ISIP that I'd like to inform you about. As it is project-based, there is little predictability as to which projects get funded. The bilateral nature of the funding has led to some misunderstandings of eligible costs between the province and the federal government and Infrastructure Canada. And finally, ISIP seems to be unable to accommodate many large-scale projects within the overall funding categories. For example, we're currently pursuing a $90 million wastewater treatment facility, and at the current annual allocations, this project, should it get funded, would exhaust the entire annual green infrastructure ISIP allocation for the province. So therefore, it's unlikely to get funded. So we'd like to make a couple recommendations on ISIP. Specifically, we'd like to see enhance or not ISIP, but any federal funding, enhance the flexible and predictable models of infrastructure funding for municipalities. We were really glad to see another proposal to double the gas tax this year. And as a regional center, per capita funding mightn't be the most progressive funding model. We sustain more infrastructure on a per capita basis, but we would be happy to tolerate that minor inequity for the flexibility and predictability that the gas tax model affords a mature, responsible municipality like ours. Also, we'd like to see a more highly targeted, large-scale funding for regional priority projects. I mentioned wastewater treatment. If this is indeed a priority for the federal government, we would like to see a clear funding path. We would gladly do our share to build reserves and incur debt if it is necessary, as long as we can get a commitment and a clear path forward from our federal and provincial partners. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well done. We're now going to move on to Mayor Poilier. Mr. Mayor, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for receiving me once again. And this time, I will be talking about the dynamic occupation of our territory. I'm the mayor of Sept-Îles, Quebec City, eastern Quebec. It's about roughly in the middle of Quebec, about 1,000 kilometers from Montreal, 1,000 kilometers from Blanc-Sablon on the other side. That's close to my friend, Mr. Pearson, who just spoke. And why do I say dynamic occupation? Because indeed, we can see that between my hometown and Mr. Pearson, there are a lot of villages, and these villages are slowly but surely emptying out, and we can understand why. The only highway on the North Shore, Highway 138, is still not finished and will not be finished in 2021. We were promised for years that this would be done. There are people in villages waiting for an opportunity to do an outing, a trip, and the highway is not there. So these are villages that are more and more isolated, and their vitality is dwindling. So these infrastructure should make the difference in dynamic occupation of the territory rather than a resilient occupation while waiting for villages to shut down. How can we continue with this sort of resilience in occupying our territory? I believe it's the same scenario throughout Canada in these so-called remote regions. We're beginning to talk about an economic corridor between Quebec, Labrador, and Newfoundland and Labrador. Today, we're adding the whole economic aspect to that. So this single highway, everyone hopes that it will be completed someday, and that the government will have the vision to open up this economic corridor and allow people to come and go, and maybe consider staying in their villages and small towns. We're also talking about aviation. It's completely disorganized. The territory, generally, the Quebec aviation industry is disorganized. So we are working very hard to set up an aviation system. The Montreal Economic Research Institute has done a study, or rather, a study on contemporary economics, and they conclude that we have to be innovative. We must we must stop having these blinders on, and that's what I'm asking you today, to send out this message in promoting dynamic occupation of the territory in a new way. In the study, where they're considering cooperatives where the population can become owners of these means of transportation. So, working to maintain those means. The issues at stake are quite high, but at the same time, we are neglecting these little spots, these areas. We're injecting millions to widen highways in the big cities. To me, it's counterproductive, especially in a situation where we're trying to fight against climate change. So here we are increasing the number of cars on the roads. We cannot finish a single highway in a part of the country that is chock full of natural resources. So we don't have to wait for crises such as we have currently with the pandemic. Sometimes the best way of having an economic recovery is through infrastructure after that, but at least trying to respond to some of the basic needs of the population in these remote areas. Mr. Chair, you can please indicate if I'm going beyond my time. It's about 26,000 people in Setil. It's an important regional hub. And if I look at the eastern area, all the villages, if they don't become revitalized, we will all bear the negative consequences. Setil is less and less fed by tourism visits, so we must have a vision. If I know you have a vision for development throughout Canadian territory, minimally, we should respond to the essential needs of the populations, such as transportation, be it air transport, highway transport, and there is the whole issue of communications that is we're talking about more and more. So the communications aspect, knowing that we need high-speed internet, efforts have been made in that direction. This would allow people to work from anywhere, distance, work from home. So, and all these things would help people to feel less isolated. So, basically, that's my message today, and I hope we can have some interesting exchanges on that. Thank you.
We're now going to move on to the Hamilton-Oshawa Port Authority. Mr. Hamilton, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Sorry, I forgot the most important thing to unmute. Thank you very much for having me, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. It's my pleasure to be invited today to discuss the power of targeted infrastructure investments to build sustainable, resilient supply chains and deliver prosperity. The Hamilton-Oshawa Port Authority, or HOPA Ports as we know ourselves now, is the largest integrated port network on the Great Lakes, with ports and marine facilities in Hamilton, Oshawa, and now Niagara. Our goals are to facilitate international trade, improve transportation efficiency in Ontario, reduce congestion and greenhouse gas emissions, and serve the Ontario industries that rely on the multimodal transportation network that we provide. In Ontario, we don't necessarily think of ourselves as a marine province, but we have 10,000 kilometers of Great Lakes shoreline and access to a marine highway in the Great Lakes St. Lawrence that connects North America's industrial heartland to any market around the world. Our maritime character is an advantage of geography that perhaps we have come to take for granted. But in doing so, we could miss out on its benefits, especially the economic prosperity that it can deliver. At HOPA Ports, we've been working to leverage a valuable combination of strategic location, transportation infrastructure, and industrial land in Hamilton and Oshawa's working waterfronts, successfully attracting more than $350 million in investment in the past decade, supporting 2,100 jobs on site and handling goods worth $3 billion connected to 38,000 jobs in the province of Ontario. Throughout Southern Ontario, by beginning to see these assets as part of an integrated network, we can start to explore innovative ideas to serve our growing region. We should be thinking of how to use marine highways to reduce congestion on our clogged highways by consolidating truck traffic onto short sea shipping alternatives, or by staging construction materials for urban waterfront developments, projects elsewhere in the region, or urban waterfront projects elsewhere in the region, and delivering these materials by barge on a just-in-time basis. We need to ensure that we are continuing to foster a positive environment for manufacturing, food processing, and construction materials, sectors which are among the most valuable economic engines for our region. As we have seen in Hamilton and Oshawa, there is enormous demand for transportation-intensive industrial land for these types of businesses, and we're currently working to activate more valuable industrial land along the Welland Canal, specifically in Thorold, Welland, and Port Colborne, to allow for the attraction of new industry and jobs in the region. As Ontario's largest port authority, it is part of our mandate and responsibility to facilitate trade in our region. We believe the best way to accomplish this is to begin to take a more regional perspective and to tap into Ontario's rich maritime heritage to help deliver a prosperous future. One way to move forward on our mandate is to ensure responsible investment in infrastructure that has the greatest return for the Canadian economy. We are immensely pleased to see the recent federal budget renew the National Trade Corridor Fund, a highly successful and well-administered program. The NTCF has been a vehicle for delivering targeted economic stimulus through infrastructure. Now more than ever, the NTCF can be used to support cost-effective, energy-efficient supply chains that play a critical role in Canada's economic recovery. In 2018, the predecessor Hamilton Port Authority received an investment of $17.7 million through the NTCF program. We matched that fund and more and put in a total of $45 million. And since that time, that fund has actually been able to attract a further $50 million in third-party investment onto our property. And looking ahead to the design and objectives to this round of the NTCF program, we would highlight the integrated nature of trade within the Great Lakes region. We would encourage the renewed program to consider the function of the Great Lakes region are different than those of the coastal trade gateways. Canada-US bilateral trade throughout the Great Lakes is valued at over $6 trillion annually. Especially in Southern Ontario, Canada's manufacturing heartland, imports of raw materials are essential for the downstream competitiveness of Canadian industries. The GTHA is the fastest growing region in North America, with a population due to surpass 8 million. Meanwhile, the region suffers from some of North America's worst road congestion, costing an estimated $6 billion per year. We would encourage the NTCF program to emphasize increasing Canada-US trade, including imports tied to domestic industrial supply chains like manufacturing and construction, which will be central to economic recovery and employment. There is a unique opportunity to reduce greenhouse gases and congestion resulting from truck transportation through the development of short sea shipping opportunities. Better use of the marine mode will reduce trucks on the province's highways, decrease road congestion, cut capital requirements for expanded roadways, and decrease greenhouse gas emissions. Shipping goods by water is far more energy efficient and less costly than land-based modes. A single vessel of 30,000 tons of cargo can replace close to 1,000 trucks. Investing in marine transportation in the Great Lakes will advance Canada's blue economy strategy with the potential to spur growth across the board in fishing, marine transportation, shipbuilding, energy, tourism, and recreation. The expansion of trade capacity at Canada's Great Lakes ports is essential to the growth and competitiveness of the agri-food, construction, and manufacturing sectors. In order to meet all of these demands, we must begin making better use of our marine capacity. Doing so would represent a major step forward to delivering benefits to Canadian trade, environment, and local economies. At Hope Ports, we're ready now to start making these investments Canada needs to emerge stronger from the pandemic. We have identified shovel-ready infrastructure improvements which will maximize immediate impact in our regional economies, while also delivering long-term benefit to Canada's supply chains. We look forward to working with you for a more sustainable, resilient, and prosperous Canada that makes the most of its maritime transportation infrastructure, and in particular those in the Great Lakes. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to address the committee. I'd be pleased to answer any questions when they come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Well done. We're now going to move on to the Insurance Bureau of Canada. Mr. Craig Stewart, Vice President, Federal Affairs. Mr. Stewart, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Good afternoon, and thank you, committee members, for the invitation today. I coordinate work on disaster preparedness and climate change at the Insurance Bureau of Canada, or IBC, your home, car, and business insurers. As an industry, we are particularly interested in strengthening resilience among businesses and households in the face of the increasing impact of climate change in Canada. Why is infrastructure important for climate resilience? Well, Canada is warming at twice the rate of much of the rest of the world due to climate change. And for insurers, this is a material financial threat. Canada's insured losses due to severe weather have quadrupled from $422 million annually before 2008 to $1.9 billion on average since. And our problem is your problem. In 2019, Lloyd's of London left the Canadian commercial insurance market in part due to these significant severe weather losses. Businesses like condominium boards and tourism operators couldn't find affordable insurance after Lloyd's left the market. Climate resilience is defined as the ability of a community to absorb future stress from floods, windstorms, or wildfires while continuing to function. Infrastructure, such as stormwater system upgrades, flood diversion channels, or natural features such as wetlands, are key to introducing resilience. The Government of Canada has taken some important steps to address this escalating climate risk, from funding resilience retrofits through the Green and Inclusive Community Buildings Program to partnering with us to develop a national high-risk flood insurance program. Early work is underway. Public Safety Canada is leading a national risk profile to assess which communities across Canada are most exposed to flood, wildfire, and earthquake risk. Infrastructure Canada has launched the National Infrastructure Assessment, which considers how natural disasters such as floods and fires impact infrastructure and how to mitigate future climate risks through the deployment of defensive infrastructure, including where nature may play a role. In combination, these two efforts should provide the detail needed to prioritize future investments to lower Canadian risk. But much more needs to be done. The investments announced are insufficient. In 2017, the government launched the $2 billion Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund, or DMAF, which was quickly overcommitted. Budget 2021 announced a $1.4 billion extension of that program over 11 years. That number is still inadequate to protect Canadian communities. To put that into context, we paid out more than $1.4 billion in losses from a 20-minute hailstorm in Calgary last June. The Government of Canada is finally taking the future risks of climate change seriously. However, we are facing escalating climate risk right now. And climate adaptation deserves the same degree of all hands on deck rigor to design the policies and programs that will actually protect Canadians today. Here are the recommendations that we would propose for your committee report. First, Canada needs a national climate adaptation strategy that sets time-bound targets for protecting Canadians. For example, that strategy could target protecting 30% of high-risk Canadian homes and businesses from flooding by 2030. That strategy should center on the national risk profile, and the National Infrastructure Assessment should explicitly link to it, identifying future programming like an expanded DMAF and a resilient home retrofit program that addresses those goals for communities at risk. Secondly, government investments can't do it all. Private capital is essential to building resilience. And yet we spend a lot of time in this country debating how to price carbon and almost no time pricing climate risk. We lack the valuation framework and tools needed to price the resilience value of infrastructure and to convert this into revenue generating financial instruments. Canada has now joined Australia and the UK in the Coalition for Climate Resilient Investment, or CCRI, a public-private collaboration to develop the evaluation frameworks needed to deploy private capital. Infrastructure Canada should be aggressively positioning this country to benefit from this work. Finally, Canada Infrastructure Bank should play a role in this policy development with CCRI. Currently, the CIB has not invested a dime on climate adaptation, and they won't until resilience projects can earn revenue. They should engage in demonstration pilots that build systemic resilience in Canada. In conclusion, we're finally playing offense on climate change by aggressively lowering emissions, but we need to play defense too to defend Canadians from the severe weather we are already experiencing. And targeted infrastructure investments from the public and private sector must be foundational to our resilience game plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. You raised some great points. And to all the witnesses, well done. I do want to say that on behalf of the committee, we very much appreciate the time, your valuable time that you're taking today to be with us on this very important subject matter. So with that, we're going to go to our first round, 6 minutes each for each recognized party. We're going to start off with the Conservative Party. Mr. Chair, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I just want to echo what you've said. Very interesting presentations by our witnesses today. Heard a lot of different aspects of Canada's infrastructure needs addressed from a very interesting group of witnesses. I particularly liked the mention of the idea of these trade corridors. This was something that, of course, the previous Conservative government really championed with the Asia Pacific corridor. Many communities throughout Canada were able to upgrade everything from roads and rail yards to port facilities to help deal with some of the logistics challenges that prevented Canadian companies from accessing Asian markets. That was a very successful corridor program. So it's nice when you see those types of legacy projects continue and benefit communities as diverse from Newfoundland all the way to British Columbia. So I wanted to touch on that a little bit and maybe ask the representatives of the port authorities here, both in Corner Brook and Hamilton, Oshawa. Obviously, hard assets are a huge benefit to being able to expand our trading opportunities, exporting more. I think I heard Mr. Gentleman from Corner Brook talk about the ability to buy a crane. That's kind of easy to understand how that benefits and enables the ability to expand operations. Sometimes, though, government rules and regulations get in the way of some of the expansion of some of the operations. So I wanted to ask a question about specifically cabotage. Is that something, in your view, the current rules relating to cabotage here in Canada, the ability for ships bringing in goods to Canada to stop off at multiple points of entry? We've got two different ports here, two different parts of the country. I'd love to hear your different perspectives on the way that rule affects your ability to grow and expand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll start off with Mr. Hamilton, then I'll move over to Mayor of Corner Brook. Mr. Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's I guess the answer is a bit like my daughter's profile, and it's complicated. I think that the opportunity, the cabotage, obviously, and the part of it was originally designed to protect a domestic fleet and to protect a domestic shipbuilding industry. And I think that as a result of that, we've ended up with a large shipbuilding or shipping community in Canada, which has really been geared up to serving the Canadian market. So if you were to abandon the cabotage rules, then I think there would have to be some consideration towards how they can manage and how they can work with their workforces being obligated to use existing union workforces. Now, so I do I say all of that as a preface to my answer, but because I think there has to be some consideration for those domestic operators today if it were to be opened up. However, the opportunities to actually opening it up, I think, are quite large, in that you would bring in a lot more competitiveness and you'd bring in a lot more capacity of ships coming into the system. And I think that when you look at jurisdictions like Europe, where these cabotage rules don't exist, and you see how much they use short sea shipping and smaller vessels to transport goods, and how effective it can be, I think that there is a there is a real opportunity to it in creating more capacity and more competitiveness. But I will acknowledge for all of our ship owning friends in Canada that there has to be some recognition of the impact it would have onto their existing operations.
Mayor Parsons.
Yes, thank you. I believe Mr. Hamilton would have a lot more expertise in this regard. I sit on our Port Corporation board by virtue of my office as mayor. We have an international container freight service here. In the past, we have had a domestic shipper as well. We have, of course, with our mill, it's largely export to international markets. And we have opportunities for our fisheries, fishing industry, of course. But we are somewhat limited by those rules. So again, the implications to the overall shipping industry, I think I defer to someone like Mr. Hamilton. But from our perspective, it does limit somewhat what we can do and how we can support our local regional economy.
Mr. Chair?
Thanks very much. And just about how much time do I have left, Mr. Chair?
You have 1 minute.
Okay. Well, I'll try to maybe very briefly get to from our two mayors. Of course, like you know, we get very frustrated when we hear stories of the billions of dollars that go lapsing in government programs. The fact that the Canadian Infrastructure Bank hasn't yet been able to complete a single project. It's supposed to be a signature government program. So, you know, we've heard your recommendations, but I just want to give you one more opportunity to talk about what you're looking for in terms of flexibility for local areas. What we've heard in previous meetings that sometimes when the criteria gets set here in Ottawa, there's a lot of great projects that are getting filtered out because they don't quite fit into what a government in Ottawa has set. And what would you like to see in terms of flexibility to empower local decision making?
Mayor Parsons?
Thank you. Yes, as I mentioned, the flexibility. So we've seen funding like the gas tax, which has been very helpful because we are a mature, professional organization. We have a lot of accountability and a lot of ability to decide what's best for our municipality. From a bilateral funding like ISIP, we've actually seen more flexibility from Infrastructure Canada than we have through our provincial government. So sometimes there are disagreements about the eligible costs and things like that, and we get a little hung up. And as I mentioned, also the funding categories that are used sometimes limit how much can be done. So green infrastructure, that's about here in Newfoundland, I think that amounts to roughly 30 million a year in the federal contribution perspective. Our single project at a $90 million water treatment facility would take up that entire allotment for a year. So the flexibility, I guess, at both, I think, the provincial level and at the municipal level. Municipalities are becoming more independent and more responsible, and I think we should be allowed to, as much as possible, set our own course.
Mayor Poirier, go ahead. You're on mute. There you go.
Yes, I agree with Mr. Pearson, certainly, on the fact that most of the expenses are right at home. We're in the field, but the distances we have to cover, the time to get funding, the train of negotiations, sometimes when the money comes in, we're already at the end of the road. So certainly we can find ways to simplify things. Very quickly, on the issue of cabotage, I think it's obviously underused in Quebec. There are studies that show that we would save a lot on road maintenance if we used more cabotage. So we should have in place incentives towards that. Once they're set up, they would become a lot more independent. But there is a tradition in using cabotage in Quebec. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Parsons, as well as Mr. Scheer. We're now going to move on to Liberals, Liberal Party. We have Mr. Fillmore. Mr. Fillmore, you're up for 6 minutes.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to the witnesses for giving us their time and expertise. A wonderful diversity of experience here this evening. Mayor Parsons, I was glad to hear of the programs that you've been able to access in Corner Brook, and I hope that you'll continue to avail yourself of them. I was particularly glad to hear you give a shout out to the CHCI program, and I hope that lands well in your neck of the woods. Mr. Stewart, on your definition of resiliency, thank you for putting that on the record with this committee. Resiliency being the ability of infrastructure to withstand future challenges from climate change, adapt to future risks. Thank you for that. And wonderful to hear your thoughts on the Green and Inclusive Community Building Fund that we've released, and your thoughts on DMAP as well, and the need to continue paying attention to disaster mitigation. Thank you for that. I would like to direct my question, however, to Mr. Hamilton. And Mr. Hamilton, I'm sure the port community is actually quite small in Canada. You've probably visited the Halifax port, and you know that we, like the HOPA ports are in urban areas. And when a truck has to leave the port, it has to rumble through residential neighborhoods, a central business district, main streets, shopping districts, and so forth. So I was very glad to hear you talking about the interest in consolidating loads, reducing the number of trucks, which is a positive in so many ways, isn't it? GHG reductions, quality of life in the downtown, even coming down to damage to historic heritage buildings that we have in our downtown, and that may be the same where you are as well. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about the plans that you have to reduce truck traffic and the way that the Trade Corridor Fund or other funds, how they might help you and what you're looking for us there, if you would. Thank you.
Mr. Hamilton?
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's a number of ways to do it, and working with your individual municipalities to ensure following of the of sort of the municipal truck routes is an essential item. Working with municipalities, I think Montreal is doing it. We're doing it. Vancouver's doing it. We were using RFID technology to track trucks to see where they were actually routed through the downtown corridors, and to try to educate and ensure that the trucks were following the pre-prescribed routes. That's kind of the obvious thing, but I think from the bigger picture, what we're really excited about is the Canadian Centre on Transportation Data and the open data and the work that's currently going on between goods movement transparency and freight visibility. And we believe that there hasn't been enough work done in Canada to create the databases of the information so that we can truly understand where the capacity exists. And it can be a capacity in a system, as in the Great Lakes on the marine side, but it could also be capacity in terms of space inside of a truck. And how do we work to maximize utilization of that space and reduce the volumes? So I know it's right at its infancy, but we really think that that's a great initiative. The CCTD, and I think that port authorities can across the country can really help in collecting and helping to do the analytics on that data, with a goal to again trying to maximize the utilization of the existing capacity, which would ultimately reduce the truck volumes. Again, I think using data to find more sustainable supply chains. We believe there's, as I mentioned, opportunities to create short sea shipping services that could take trucks off the most congested parts of the road, and it's under. But again, I think data is the new currency, and Canada has worked very much in silos based on the different modes, and it's time now to integrate those silos together and to really build a database that allows us to look at transportation as integration between the modes rather than three individual silos. But I think there's a couple of hard initiatives, but that data work is being done, I think, is phenomenal.
Mr. Fillmore?
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. To hear you talk about data, you remind me very much of the CEO of the Halifax Port Authority, Captain Alan Gray, who's very much focused on data and bringing a smart view to our port operation here as well. If there's a moment left, I wondered if I might change the topic and ask you about greening the energy used in the ships themselves. So Canada has a hydrogen strategy that's emerging. Is there any discussion at all in HOPA about facilitating a move to greener fuels?
Mr. Hamilton?
Yeah, for sure. We actually fueled our first LNG vessel last year in Hamilton that was ever fueled on the Great Lakes, and we think hydrogen is a absolutely fantastic technology, although it's just not ready for the market yet. But yeah, so anything we can do, we're offering incentives in terms of access to our docks, free storage space in that situation for the LNG before it went onto was loaded onto the vessels. So we're doing whatever we can to try to encourage the shipping lines to use greener technologies. I think it was De Gagné who's moved a lot of their vessels to LNG, and LNG arguably may only be a stopgap until a better technology like hydrogen comes to commercial use. But we believe that the 30% reduction that LNG can provide is a great step forward, even if it might not be the creme de la creme that'll arrive to us in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Thank you, Mr. Fillmore. We're now going to move on to Mr. Barcelot-Duval of the Bloc Québécois. Mr. Barcelot-Duval, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Mr. Paulier. Earlier in your opening, you showed some of the consequences for some rural areas, the fact that they don't have good road networks, the fact that children have to leave to go to study and they just stay away, they never come back home. How do you explain, knowing these consequences, that Highway 138 has never quite been completed? Can you hear? Yes, go ahead. That's unfortunate, but it's always the same issue. It's the chicken and the egg situation. There are not too many of us on the North Shore. We're about 91,000 people. It's the second largest region in Quebec, 12,000 coastal kilometers. So it's hard to make our voices heard. And as such, it's very hard to obtain investments to complete that highway. The highway is not being completed, and there are fewer and fewer of us. I'm quite convinced that when people get out of these remote towns where it's so hard to get in or get out, once they get out, they don't really want to go back in. So I think it's an issue related to infrastructure investments. There have been promises for decades to complete this highway, to encourage people. And there is an anecdote about that. One of the former prime ministers of Quebec, Mr. René Lévesque, said to a young girl, when you grow old, the road will be completed. Just hearing those words, she never grew old. So that's the reality. It's political power. When it's time to make the decisions and say, where should we invest monies? Our voice doesn't really carry in that. We're depriving of ourselves of a major possibilities, and we are helping to have these small towns and villages shut down. Maybe further to that, there are consequences on the vitalities of these small towns, this isolation factor, but most probably there are opportunities economically to build a link between these small towns. We're talking about going from Sept-Îles up to Newfoundland. What would some of the advantages be? The advantages are quite enormous, and I think for Newfoundland and Labrador also, this corridor that would provide a highway that's much faster going to certain areas. It depends on where we have the starting point. Exchanges with Newfoundland and Labrador would be boosted. The tourism aspect would be very significant. This is an area that's not well known, but with a huge tourism potential, and it's being recognized more and more. Unfortunately, this unfortunate pandemic brought that positive element. People go to visit their own region a lot more. So trying to complete the cycle, linking up with Newfoundland, that would be a dream. Opening up this road, there will be access to natural resources on the territory. There is very little exploration done on that vast territory, so the possibilities are endless. I had an opportunity for the first time, as you said, last year, with this frontiers for the first time. I went all the way to the end of the 138 because of the pandemic. Maybe others would have an opportunity. And I was disappointed to see, it's over. There is nothing. There is no way to go further. It's unfortunate that Quebecers cannot visit these areas of their own territory. How is it perceived on the North Shore, that issue? I understand it's the main issue in your community right now. Is there some consensus, unanimity surrounding this issue? To what extent does the population support the project? it's very hard on such a vast territory as ours to have consensus, but this particular file was the subject of great consensus. Even with people in Labrador, we met some mayors from Labrador. The minister came to Sept-Îles to visit us. We went to Ottawa along with indigenous communities, and that was a first. We're talking about climate change, on and on. One of the aspects, the boat that makes the link between the villages has a harder and harder time landing off-season. So they tend to just go straight through. And that's another reality. People want the road completed, and then there is a health issue if you don't have access. The temperatures may not allow you to take a flight or to take a boat. So there are some health issues involved, especially in cases of emergencies. So we can understand why they may not want to stay there. One last question, because I see I don't have too much time. I know the North Shore was hard hit by cuts in Air Canada for regional service. In your view, how do you see the agreement between the government and Air Canada? First time, every time Air Canada received significant grants, they cut the competition. They became pretty much monopoly, Air Canada in Quebec. And right now we are working towards this idea of a co-op because we would have a minimum tariff system to have bigger planes, Q400s. Finally, we will have our word to say as far as air transport service in Quebec, especially in the smaller or the remote regions. Air Canada, the prices are so high. I have seen a one-way Sept-Îles Quebec ticket for $1,200, and it's barely 2 hours of flight time. That's ridiculous, but that's what's happening. So it's underutilized because the prices are quite prohibitive. People are sometimes using their cars in the middle of the winter to go seek medical health in Quebec City, whereas they could be able to use flights, but they can't do so because of the high cost.
Well, we're now going to move on to the NDP. Mr. Bachrach. Mr. Bachrach, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for their presentations. I'd like to continue with Mayor Poirier. It's really good to hear your testimony, and you represent a very rural region that is probably similar, I imagine, to some of the parts of Northwest BC. Very small communities with difficult transportation connections and other aspects of remoteness that impact the quality of life in those places. Could you describe for me what the current state of affairs in your region is when it comes to rural connectivity and access of rural residents to broadband internet?
Mr. Mayor?
Oui,
Yes, the last few years, I can say there is a particular effort made. Normally, these programs, even if they come from Ottawa, are administered by Quebec City. And we have understood that the regions need service. We've seen efforts towards that. There are some commitments, there are deadlines to make sure that throughout all Quebec communities, there is a broadband that is necessary. We're talking about high speed, so we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that's obviously one of the factors that will allow people to remain within their communities to live.
Mayor Poirier, following up on that, one of the things we see, I think, across Canada is that the model for building access to broadband in rural areas involves partnering with the private sector. And then the private sector goes out and tries to put together a business case. Usually, the least populated areas, the most sparsely populated areas are left out, or they're at the end of the line when it comes to service. Do you think that the current model, which relies on the private sector and the existence of a profitable business case, do you think that that model is adequate for rural areas like the one in your region?
Mr. Mayor?
Je pense que vous touchez.
Well, you just put your finger on something, be it in this area or other areas such as aviation, private businesses. They're all there to make maximum profit. So they will go to operate where there are high population densities. So, yes, the government has to strongly support those areas where it's less profitable to operate. I was talking about these prohibitive prices or costs for tickets. That's also part of the results. The free market, eventually, when we have access, the cost would be too high. Only a few people will be able to afford these things. So, yes, we require support from all levels of government to make sure. For me, today in 2021, it's an essential need. Everyone should have access under the same conditions. And it's an issue of accessibility. It leads to everything else, development. We should put in place development tools. Just give us the means, the minimum, just the basics, access to transportation, data, digital, and you can see that we will develop the areas. We can show great imagination, but it's to make these things available for all citizens throughout the territories.
Mayor Poirier, what you mentioned about affordability is very interesting. And what we have seen with the federal government is that they're pretty much their sole strategy for ensuring the affordability of broadband is competition. And at least in my estimation, there are many parts of rural Canada where there are so few customers that they can only support one provider, one service provider. So there is always a monopoly in those areas. Do you feel that the government's current strategy for driving affordability through competition is going to serve rural areas adequately?
Mr. Mayor?
You're absolutely right in saying that there are areas where competition will not be possible. We have to recognize that because of the few people living there. But we shouldn't be subsidizing excessive cost. In aviation, it's somewhat the same model. We are subsidizing people to buy a plane ticket. But for us, the plane ticket cost has been exaggerated. So we give the subsidy to private business instead of taking that money and putting it towards a better network. So I agree with you. We must have a strategy where the goal is not to enrich somebody who gets into a market where that may not even be viable. So let's put in place the necessary ingredients to provide access to everyone. That is a cost to pay, yes, but I think we'll have better service instead of investing that amount. I can tell you the example of the airplane ticket is good. A ticket for $1,200 set till Quebec, that's not reasonable. If I subsidize the ticket price, I'm just giving money to the company. I was mentioning the cooperatives. A ticket, Sept-Îles Quebec ticket would be $318, tax included, with the Q400 because it's a good plane. So $1,200 one way. Imagine that money. We are giving grants in the wrong areas.
Mr. Backrack?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We're now going to move on to our second round, starting off with the Conservatives for 5 minutes. Ms. Kusi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much to all of our witnesses who are here today. I'm going to continue down the Liberal line of questioning of my colleague MP Fillmore in regards to ports, and I really liked what he was talking about in that conversation there about data and freight visibility. That was very encouraging to me, as certainly many of the stakeholders that I've talked to have indicated the lack of a supply chain map within our nation, clearly identifying all modes, how they interrelate to each other. And then the second thing being the lack of transparency, as to data. And this was something that I mentioned in my speech regarding the Port of Montreal discussion that we had last week. But building on that, one of the other items I talked about in my Port of Montreal speech was the concern that many ports have in terms of the lack of capacity and the infrastructure that would be required and a necessity to meet the demands of capacity going into the future. So to Mr. Hamilton, I would ask if he has any concerns in regards to future capacity constraints for his port, please.
Mr. Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, specifically for Hamilton and Oshawa, we certainly feel the constraints now, and we're struggling to meet demand, which is why we're looking at other opportunities in along the Welland Canal in Niagara. The container volumes, although we don't do too many containers, but container volumes generally grow at about double what GDP grows at, is sort of a rule of thumb. So you can see that there's going to be continuing demand for imported container volumes, which puts increased capacity issues onto, particularly on the gateway ports. But we see it inside of the interior ports as well. So yes, to answer your question, we do see capacity issues. The other area that we see is call it gentrification, and so many ports have been built in cities, or cities were built around the ports because they were there. And in a lot of ways, sometimes the cities outgrown the port, and now there's continual pressure. You see it in Hamilton, you see it in Toronto, you see it in certainly in Vancouver, where the residents are kind of wishing the port wasn't there. And so I think it's very important that we start to look at ports outside of these the urban boundaries. And again, this is why we're looking into some of the more rural areas of the Niagara Peninsula to see opportunities to expand.
Ms. Goosey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Then again, Mr. Hamilton, my next question was going to be if capacity concerns were felt by many of the ports in Canada, in your opinion. So you touched upon ports within your region. Do you ever have conversations about these concerns with the other major ports? MP Fillmore brought up Halifax, of course, since that's where he is. But of course, I continue to have conversations with other ports such as Prince Rupert, Vancouver. Do you ever have conversations where these concerns are shared as well by these larger ports with these port authorities?
Mr. Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you. There's the Association of Canadian Port Authorities, which is a fantastic forum for the CEOs of the port authorities to talk and share concerns. And I serve on the board of the Association of Canadian Port Authorities. So we know that universally every port feels that they have the same issues. Some more acute than other ones, and some looking at more of the long-term problem. Some of the ports you mentioned, particularly around Vancouver and Prince Rupert, who see phenomenal growth, are probably some of the ones that are most acute. But some great projects in Montreal have been announced to address some of their shortages. I know that Quebec City's got a neat project on the go, and I know that expansion on the East Coast has always been a consideration for Halifax. So yes, I think every port is faced with the same situation, some worse than other ones, and we do communicate together on that subject.
Ms. Goosey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hamilton. Mr. Chair, with my last half minute here, I will move to the notice of motion that I put on advisory 2 days ago. I know that there have been conversations amongst all parties and as well as the clerk. So I'm hopeful that I can present it and we can vote on it and move along to the rest of the rounds with our witnesses here today, please. So I'll put it forward again that with the exception of the planned appearance of the Minister of Transport and the Minister of Foreign Affairs on the study of the government's response to the Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752 tragedy and one meeting on the Twin Otter type aircraft study, that the committee prioritize all remaining meetings before June 10th in the spring schedule to the consideration and adoption of reports with regard to the following studies: aircraft certification process, impact of COVID-19 on the aviation sector, and Canada infrastructure. Bank, just sort of to get the assurance of the committee that we will do our best to complete these reports and get them to the House, given the quantity of work that we have done on them to date. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kusi. I do want to speak on this as well. I think we can go to the vote. Mr. Clerk, we had a discussion today, or I had a discussion with my assistant today, and I understand there is a bit of a problem for Tuesday's meeting. If you can let members of the committee know what that challenge is with respect to how it affects our schedule, I'd appreciate that. Mr. Clerk?
Sure. Yeah, there's the issue of one of the witnesses that we were looking at bringing in is currently resides in the UK, and we have very late evening sittings on Tuesdays. And he would also have been, he would have required technical assistance and support, and he would not have been able to get IT support. I guess it would have been around midnight where he's at. So that, and there's also on the subject matter of that study, there's a report coming out next week, and I believe the department that wanted to share that information with the families first, and would have felt really awkward being at committee to answer questions on that before they'd had a chance to discuss it with the families.
Okay, so what does that do for our scheduling?
Well, I guess the impact would be if the committee wants to begin looking at draft reports on Tuesday, we would simply move the first meeting that we were thinking on for the Ukraine flight 752 would be bumped back into June, and everything else would pretty much stay the same. And we would just focus on reports, except for the next week's visit with the ministers.
Ms. Kusi?
Yeah, I'm fine with moving the first meeting of the study. I should just add, Clerk, that the motion does also state that the Twin Otter study remains as well, not just the 752, just to clarify for
Correct.
all committee members. Thank you.
Correct. Great. Now, are there any further questions from members of the committee as per the motion? Questions or comments? With none, Mr. Clerk, I'll ask you to call the vote, please.
Sure. Mr. Fillmore.
In favor.
Monsieur El Khoury.
En faveur.
Ms. Jazik.
In favor.
Mr. Rogers.
In favor.
Monsieur Iacono.
Pour.
Mr. Scheer.
In favor.
Ms. Kusi.
In favor.
Mr. Shipley.
In favor.
Mr. Soroka.
In favor.
Monsieur Barcelou Duval.
Pour.
And Mr. Backrack.
In favor.
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Thank you, members. We're now going to go back to
Thank
our
you, Polly.
Thank you, Ms. Kusi. We're now going to go back to the second round of questions we have for the Liberals. Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome to all of our guests today. And I especially want to highlight Mayor Parsons from the beautiful city of Corner Brook, scenic Corner Brook on the West Coast, and happy to hear that you're getting some great support from your MP colleague, Goody Hutchings. Mayor Parsons, just a couple of questions. First of all, you talked about the impact of the infrastructure programs and the funding you get for the city of Corner Brook. So I guess the alternative of that is, what would be the impact on small and medium-sized cities like yourselves and communities in Newfoundland and Labrador without further in future, infrastructure investments from the federal government?
Mayor?
Yes, thank you. As you know well, Mr. Rogers, the municipalities here are facing, I guess, a difficult situation when it comes to the state of infrastructure. Our city is approximately, it's been in this area for about 100 years, incorporated as a city only 60, but we have a great deal of infrastructure needs when it comes to upgrades and maintenance. So without, I guess, substantial support, it is almost impossible to keep ahead of it. We undergo a pretty rigorous asset management program, but there is never enough infrastructure funding to go around. So it is imperative, really, that we continue a steady, predictable stream of infrastructure funding. As I mentioned in my testimony, the gas tax model for us has worked really, really well. We don't have to wait. We can move ahead. It offers us a great deal of flexibility to make decisions for ourselves and really prioritize, as opposed to project-based funding, which is more difficult to predict.
Mr. Rogers.
Mayor Parsons, yeah, I was going to ask you about the gas tax funding actually, and the stability that it brings to you and the flexibility and so on. Do you have any other suggestions or recommendations to the federal government in terms of the gas tax fund and how it's currently deployed and the flexibility it provides?
Well, as I mentioned, I think there are there's sort of two sides to our needs. Any municipality requires ongoing maintenance and upgrades to infrastructure, so the predictability is super important. And if we can maintain and grow that aspect of it, while at the same time, as I mentioned, providing a clear path for large infrastructure projects, these once every 20-year type projects, and a clear path of those that are the priority of our federal and provincial governments, of course. But I think providing more predictable, steady funding would be key and would allow us to do a lot better asset management for our municipalities.
Rogers.
Yes, and of course, the fact that we're doubling that gas tax fund for this year is tremendous news to you and other mayors across Newfoundland and Labrador, and of course across the country. I've got one final question here, Chair, to Mr. Stewart. Regards to the insurance programs, is paying greater attention to risk management by municipalities the way to prevent future escalating premiums for municipalities and I guess for all around the sector?
Mr. Stewart.
Yes, thank you for the question. Canada is becoming a riskier and riskier place for insurers to do business. If you take a look at the losses that insurers have paid over the last decade on the property side, there are some areas of the country where insurers are actually losing money. And so, yes, focusing on risk reduction at the municipal level is a way to make sure that that constituents and businesses pay a reasonable amount of insurance instead of the increases that we've been seeing lately.
Mr. Rogers.
And for our good friend from Seattle, just wondering, how do you see the value of the infrastructure funding in completing work in your particular region?
Mr. Mayor.
Oui, bonjour.
Yes, thanks for the question. I'm thinking mostly about what we call the PAFIR, that's the Sports Infrastructure Fund. During the last campaign, the needs were established at about 1.4 billion, but the fund only represented 282 million, and you're talking about the provincial and federal funds merged, so there is a huge gap. Currently, we need to renew an arena that is crumbling, and we're not able to do so. I just want to point out that Seattle, for those who don't know Seattle, it's a port city. We have the biggest port for minerals in North America. Mining companies, when they came in, they built the ski center, the golf club, the curling rings. Today, it's no longer the case. So we have a lot of difficulty trying to replace this infrastructure. Obviously, we appreciate the efforts invested. Recently, you spoke about the gas tax, but there is still a lot to be done.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. We're now going to move on to the block. Mr. Barceló Duval, you have 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Still, for Mr. Paulier, you seem quite popular today. My question, maybe we've already heard this. We might have discussed it in the committee, but I never asked you this question directly. For example, when we're talking about the rural municipalities, there are some infrastructure in areas where there are no roads on the North Shore. Sometimes you have ports, quays, and airports. Maybe the quays are used more than airports, but there is also issues relating with the maintenance of these quays, and then we have issues with the roads. So sometimes the federal government uses the roads as a pretext to remove money from the maintenance of these ports, and often these are the people who rely on those infrastructure. Don't you think it's a bad policy for the government saying you need infrastructure, now you have a road, so we'll forget about other things? I think it's even harder when you're told you will have a road, but we will not invest because things are not done quickly enough. You're right. All fishing activities are very important all along the coast. For air transport, that's the only way you can leave quickly and go somewhere. As I said, it's 1,200 kilometers of coastline. So when we have to move quickly, we need to take planes. And it's going to be the case for a long time. So that's obviously an issue. We can't say we'll stress one element to the neglect of the other. It's the whole issue of the vitality, the dynamic occupation of a territory. There is a difference between occupying a territory dynamically. I often hear people say, and people talk about resilience. They will survive. These people are tired. I will be the first to go visit Newfoundland by simply jumping into my car and driving, and I know a lot of people want to do that. And one last point on the aviation issue, even if it's not directly linked to infrastructure, the federal programs that have been put in place subsidized transport only where there were no roads. But in an area that's thousands of kilometers from the major centers, is that viable, doing that? Well, still, we're lucky to have the highway, but we have the third busiest airport in Quebec. It's a regional hub. Things coming from the north, it comes from Wabush, from the east, from all the communities to the east. So these infrastructure have to be maintained and maintain the rhythm. We're talking about social and economic development. Yes, often the economic aspect is dominant, but the people, there are so many issues. There are huge issues involved. As I've been saying for long, maybe we have to sit with the two levels of government to strategize together and say these are the tools that we should work on to make sure that this dynamic occupation takes place.
We're now going to move on to Mr. Backrack of the NDP. Mr. Backrack, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to turn next to Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart, I found your presentation at the beginning very interesting. I understand that you have welcomed the government's intention to conduct a national infrastructure investment, and I wonder if you could share with the committee what you feel the priorities of such an assessment should be. What areas of infrastructure should the assessment focus on?
Mr. Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. In context, in our view, it's important to take a step back and to conduct an assessment to figure out where are the greater needs across the country. As I said in the presentation, I'd like to stress, though, that it should be coordinated with two other activities in government. One is the development of a national adaptation strategy, and two, it should be coordinated with the work done by Public Safety Canada, Finance Canada, and Natural Resources Canada on a national risk profile. We need to get an understand of who is most vulnerable to climate risk, and we should be reducing their risk accordingly. And therefore only a national assessment, infrastructure assessment that links in to these other two studies, will give us the sort of eagle-eye view of the whole country that we need. Implicit in my answer is we believe resilience is, of course, climate resilience is the number one issue. We've heard it's important to, trade corridors are important, of course, and there's an enormous demand for broadband in rural and remote communities. We get that, but as insurers, we also believe that due attention needs to be paid to climate risk in this country. We have done, frankly, very, very little collectively to address the issue of our growing climate risk. The amounts that are being allocated in infrastructure programming are too small to meet the need of the what the needs are of municipalities across the country. So in short, we believe that climate resilience should also be prioritized in programming from Infrastructure Canada, and the infrastructure assessment will be key to illuminating that.
Mr. Bachrach, quick question.
Oh, quick question. Well, I guess, it's daunting to hear the magnitude of the climate adaptation challenge, and we're not investing nearly enough in climate mitigation, and I think the amount that we're investing in adaptation is even less. So this isn't an easy question to answer in 2 seconds, but I'm wondering about how we make sure that both of these two tranches related to climate are moving forward adequately, because right now it feels like neither is.
Good question. Mr. Stewart?
So in our view, private sector capital is important on both sides of the equation, bringing private sector capital into Canada and doing the necessary work to attract it. As I mentioned, there are efforts to price resilience underway globally. Canada should be tying into those efforts and figuring out how do we attract that capital to Canada, because it can't just be governments that are footing the whole bill.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Thank you, Mr. Bachrach. We're now going to move on to Mr. Scheer of the Conservatives. Mr. Scheer, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate the testimony that we have that we've heard, and certainly appreciate the different perspectives. I find it I always find it interesting when witnesses come and give governments ideas how they can do a better job of things. Not necessarily always with just spending more money. The expenditure of money is not necessarily the best metric to determine success. It's the efficiency of that program, and when you spend a lot of money but get poorer results, we've got something wrong. So I really enjoyed the feedback on the impact of cabotage rules and what that the consequence that has on our shipping industry and on our logistics industry as well. I'm hopeful that we can continue on this line of questioning. We have had a motion before the committee for the last few meetings. Many members have had the opportunity to express themselves. So hopefully we can quickly take care of some housekeeping and then move back to give our witnesses more opportunity to discuss these very important topics. So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we resume debate on the motion and the amendment that we were dealing with at the last committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Scheer. A motion to resume debate. Any questions on that motion? Mr. Fillmore, you had a question on that motion?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Actually, Mr. Fillmore, there's my apologies. There's no questions on that. It goes straight to a vote. Mr. Clerk, if you can call the vote, please.
Sorry, point of order, Mr. Chair. The motion that we're voting on now is whether to resume debate. Is that what we understand?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fillmore. Mr. Clerk, if you can call the vote, please.
Mr. Fillmore.
Against.
Mr. El-Khoury.
Contre.
Ms. Jacek.
Against.
Mr. Rogers.
Against.
Monsieur Iacono.
Contre.
Mr. Scheer.
In favor.
Ms. Kusi,
In favor.
Mr. Shipley,
In favor.
Mr. Soroka,
In favor.
Mr. Barcelou Duval,
Ooh,
and Mr. Backrack.
In favor.
6 yeas, 5 nays.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. So we have one hand up so far. I would encourage others that are going to have questions or comments to get their hand up. Mr. Fillmore, you have the floor.
thanks, Chair. And I do want to make some remarks, but I want to begin by saying thank you to the witnesses that joined us and shared their wisdom with us tonight. Much appreciated. I guess the first thing I'd ask is whether Mr. Scheer consulted with Ms. Kusi. I mean, we just passed a motion of Ms. Kusi's on how to best spend the time of this committee, and here we are with another conservative motion thwarting the intention of how this committee should best spend its time. But I want to carry on and say, you know, we've had some interesting debate on this motion. It's been unfortunately very time consuming. It's left witnesses in a state of having prepared, but then not being spoken to. We did a little bit better today. Unfortunately, we're still leaving maybe an hour on the table that we're not going to be able to get to the witnesses. So I really have been reflecting on the motion and the motivations behind it. And the more that I've thought about it, the more plain it becomes that this is simply a motion that we just can't support. Now I know we've moved some amendments that have tried to make marginal improvements to the motion, but they've just been that marginal. We've been tinkering at the margins. We've tried to make changes to a completely unreasonable deadline for a request that will run into the thousands of pages for a document production order. We've tried to make an amendment making sure that we respect official languages and how this motion would be responded to, given the importance that we all place on ensuring that both of our official languages are respected and ensuring that official language laws are always followed at the federal government level. We've even tried to make amendments ensuring that our committee is not asking the Canada Infrastructure Bank to violate its own statute. But at the end of the day, those amendments, even if they all got passed, would only serve to make slight improvements to what is a fundamentally flawed motion and one that we simply cannot support. The point is that this motion has been designed to sabotage the Canada Infrastructure Bank's ability to fulfill its mandate, which is to attract private and institutional capital to get more projects built across the country to benefit Canadians. Now, we heard even this evening testimony from a witness who twice brought up the importance of attracting private capital to investments in public infrastructure in Canada, and the necessity of that, the ability to appear attractive and to bring investment partners online for projects of scale that are important to job creation, to moving toward a low carbon economy, toward creating an inclusive economy. And yet here we are persisting with a motion to sabotage the CIB. The CIB is investing in important projects all across the country, like the biggest public transit project in Quebec in the last half century, the Réseau Express Métropolitain, the REM in Montreal. Projects like the Alberta Irrigation Infrastructure Project, helping to make farmland more productive and to enhance Canada's food security.
This is going to
And strengthen our homegrown agricultural industry. Projects like the very topic that we are discussing with the excellent witnesses that we have with us right now, the Erie Connector, which will, that is the subject of this motion rather, which will reduce Ontarians' electricity costs, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and create jobs. And this motion is meant to put a stop to projects like these by harming the Canada Infrastructure Bank's ability to attract the very private and institutional capital that is at the heart of the CIB's mandate to make Canadian tax dollars go further, as we've heard underscored by tonight's witnesses. The Conservatives claim to be on the taxpayers' side, but it's hard to see how when they're trying to sabotage the CIB's ability to make every tax dollar get more built for our citizens. This motion is an attempt to drag confidential business information from the Canada Infrastructure Bank's investment and project proponent partners into a partisan committee where it can be used and misused for political purposes by the opposition. And as I said on Tuesday, it grieves me to see the other oppositions following the Conservatives' lead on this. It's really unfortunate. It's an attempt to destroy the independent and apolitical status of the Canada Infrastructure Bank, an institution that is intentionally insulated through its statute from political interference so that we can actually attract that private and institutional capital in an unhindered and unimpeded way. I'm going to share with you that when I was a city planner, one of the places I was a city planner over my long career and trying to build communities and build infrastructure, my observation was that many of my colleagues were.
Juste appelé pour t'avertir que.
I'd just like to point out that.
Point of order, Mr. Barcelona. Go ahead.
I think he's indicating no, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. Okay.
A mistake with the mute, I think. Okay, thank you. With that, when we were trying to regenerate the downtown of my city, we came to realize that there had been a culture that had emerged with certain departments in the local government that was more concerned on enforcing stale rules than they were on understanding the nature of capital and how capital builds cities, how capital builds infrastructure. And so I was able to bring some experts to the community to speak to fellow staff members about the role that capital plays in regenerating a downtown and rebuilding a city. And that shifted the culture in the institution. And as a result of people understanding capital, understanding the risks of private capital, that the people providing that capital go through, the risks that they take, we were able to redirect the fortune of my city, and we are now in an incredible renaissance. I think maybe some members of this committee could use the same remedial instruction on the importance of capital and the frailties of it when it comes to overexposing proprietary secrets. I also have mentioned on this committee before that I worked on the Boston Big Dig project. That was a $14 billion project that spanned 7 miles through the downtown of Boston, and had the lead company, Parsons, Brinkerhoff, Quaid, and Adams, had they had to reveal their business case when bidding for that project still wouldn't be built, because they would have run away from building what is one of the greatest modern infrastructure projects in contemporary urban history. So what would happen if this motion were to be passed? Investors, infrastructure companies, and managers of institutional capital in Canada and abroad would see that there is now a new risk that they need to account for, on top of all the other ones, pandemics and changing interest rates and every other financial risk we can imagine that must be accommodated in a business case. They now need to account for a risk in negotiating and finalizing infrastructure projects with the CIB, knowing that everything that they do might wind up on the front page of a newspaper or being broadcast on a publicly viewable Zoom committee meeting. There would now be a new political risk that they would need to account for. It's unconscionable. How can the Canada Investment Bank negotiate in good faith and sign the confidentiality agreements that are a standard part of any large investment deal, knowing that this committee might try to extract that confidential information from it in violation of its signed commercial contracts? Involving the law clerk and other such propositions won't make a difference to these institutional and private firms. What they will see is their potential investment partner being forced to break the contract that they've signed. The privileged information section of the CIB Act exists for a reason, for a very important reason. Excuse me, Mr. Speaker. It exists to give the infrastructure world the confidence that they can deal with the Canada Infrastructure Bank as a good faith investment partner. It's no coincidence that Export Development Canada has almost word for word the same provisions in its legislation. The Export Bank of Canada and Business Development Canada, BDC, to name another example, has almost exactly the same provision in its legislation. So, Chair, it's clear that the opposition is using this motion to try and make it appear that the CIB is somehow being evasive or not transparent enough. even though this committee could call, as I've mentioned and as my colleagues in the government benches have mentioned, could call whenever we like the CEO, Aaron Corey of the CIB, to answer any questions that we might have. Any question that you would like to have answered, the CEO will come and discuss that. But the truth is that this motion is designed to cut the knees out from under the CIB just as it's hitting its stride for wanton political point gathering. They've made over half a dozen new investment commitments in just the last 6 months and are announcing new deals all the time. These investments benefit Canadians, they grow our economy, they get new important projects off the ground that otherwise might not ever get built, like the Erie Connector, and Canadians end up with cleaner, greener, more livable communities in which to live, work, and thrive. Now, we heard a point made by one of the members on Tuesday that the parliamentary privilege somehow trumps the law by which the CIB works. And that may well be, but I'll tell you this. Those infrastructure companies and those private and institutional investors have no idea what parliamentary privilege is or why it's worth a darn. What they care about is being able to do the work that they have spent years becoming good at, years of learning how to build the infrastructure that keeps Canadian communities going. So if this motion passes, all that they'll see is that they signed a contract with the Canada Infrastructure Bank that included commitments by the CIB that they would not share the company's commercially sensitive information with anyone outside the CIB. And now a parliamentary committee claiming privilege is forcing the CIB to break its contract for wanton partisan political point gathering. It's such a travesty and an embarrassment. And that's why I have said before that this motion, should it pass, will have a chilling effect on the CIB's ability to fulfill its mandate and attract private and institutional capital. It introduces political risk that the CIB was specifically designed, specifically conceived of, and specifically executed to avoid this very thing. We won't let this opposition try to derail that, so we will continue to oppose this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Fillmore. Ms. Chasik?
Thank you very much, Chair. And while I'm pleased to enter into debate on this motion, I do want to apologize to the witnesses. I was very much looking forward to having my turn to question them. But I did have the opportunity to look up Mayor Poirier, if you're still listening at all, your wonderful site on tourism at Sept-Îles. Very, very intriguing. And Mayor Parsons, one of my best friends, comes from Corner Brook, but I've never visited. So I'm certainly hoping to have that opportunity. Anyway, let's get back to the motion. This motion apparently, ostensibly, is about transparency, trying to find out more about this deal related to the Lake Erie connector. The implication is that there's some sort of nefarious, secretive stuff in various documents that presumably will reflect badly on the government. But as my colleague, Mr. Fillmore, has said, it's clearly, Mr. Scheer has made his opinion of the Canada Infrastructure Bank very, very clear. It's simply a way of putting a chill on the agreement in principle. It will no doubt cause other projects that are in the line for consideration by the Canada Infrastructure Bank, probably many of those already being negotiated, for the principles of those projects, to wonder if their agreement is going to be dragged in front of a parliamentary committee and scrutinized and so on. It seems to me it's clearly a partisan move on behalf of the official opposition that may very well, in fact, cause a number of projects to be deferred or not entered into because investors will not want to have their particular project go through this process that we're embarked on today. So, as the notion is transparency, I think it's very important for people to realize just what is totally public information about the project itself. First of all, who is behind the project? The Lake Erie Connector project is being developed by ITC Investment Holdings Incorporated, the parent company of ITC Holdings Corporation, the largest independent electricity transmission company in the US, and a subsidiary of Canada-based Fortis Incorporated. Why is this transmission line needed? The Lake Erie connector is needed to create a direct energy transmission corridor between the Ontario IESO and US PJM energy markets, helping improve the security and reliability of both regional systems. It also is expected to increase market efficiencies, surely something the Conservative Party would approve of, and benefit the economies of both regions. The project has the potential to strengthen the regional grid by playing a role in emergency grid restoration. How does power currently flow between the Ontario IESO and PJM energy markets? The energy currently must flow across limited existing interstices and through other markets, such as Michigan or New York, to travel around Lake Erie. Some entities do schedule power in this way, but it is inefficient and costly. The Lake Erie connector will provide a new, direct, and efficient trading route between the two markets and will benefit both regions. What is the route of this energy transmission line? The proposed route of the Lake Erie connector is between Nanticoke, Ontario, and Erie County, Pennsylvania, and beneath Lake Erie. Now, Nanticoke, some of you may recall, was the site of a very large coal-generating plant, coal-generated electricity plant, and that was closed by the former Ontario Liberal government. And of course, it has all the infrastructure sitting there ready to connect to this Lake Erie connector. So what is the route of this energy transmission line? The proposed route, as I've said, is between Ontario and Pennsylvania. And how was this route chosen? The 2 points of interconnection in Ontario and Pennsylvania were chosen because they provide excellent access to the existing transmission systems. The cable route has been optimized to connect these 2 points while minimizing environmental impacts, avoiding areas of historical and archaeological interest, such as shipwrecks, and utilizing low-impact shoreline crossings. Where will the energy come from? There are a variety of generation sources in the markets of the Ontario Independent Electricity System Operator and PJM interconnection and neighboring regions. The shippers who purchase capacity on the Lake Erie connector will determine the source of the energy they transfer. How large are these energy markets? Ontario is Canada's second largest province, covering more than 1 million square kilometers, with a population of 13.5 million. Actually, I think it's closer to 14 million since this was put together. PJM comprises all or part of 13 US states, with a population exceeding 60 million, the largest energy market in the world. So the question was asked of the proponents, have you engaged public input on this project? And the answer was yes, numerous public consultations in Ontario and Pennsylvania were held. The respective connecting points of the line to discuss the project and gather community input. How would this project impact homes and businesses? The project development team worked closely with local and regional planners and with local residents and other stakeholders in the US and Canada to minimize impacts to local residents. And what are the major milestones in this project? I think some people may recall that, as we heard last Tuesday, this project was first conceived in 2014. So in 2017, the proponents received major permit approvals from Canada's National Energy Board, with the issuance of a certificate of public convenience and necessity for the project. The U.S. Department of Energy granted the project a presidential permit, which is required for international border crossing projects. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection all granted approvals. So remaining milestones in the project include completing project cost refinements and securing favorable transmission service agreements with prospective counterparties, after which ITC Investment Holdings Incorporated would proceed with construction as soon as 2021 or 2022. So hopefully, without this derailment of this motion, we can see this project actually start construction this year. How will the cables be installed underwater? The Lake Erie connector will use two cables that are each approximately 6 inches in diameter. A specialized ship will lay the HVDC cable along the bottom for Lake Erie, utilizing low impact water jet technology to create a temporary trench that is only slightly wider than the cable itself and which will be filled by natural forces. Of course, this type of underwater cable was used through the years. The transatlantic telephone cable, my father actually was an engineer on that project many, many decades ago. It's proven technology, and it will no doubt be a very efficient and effective way of transmitting the power that way. Is this transmission project safe? So, indeed, placing transmission cables beneath waterways is an established and safe way to move power. These cables will be well insulated, do not contain liquids or gels, and are made from non-flammable materials. Can the cable be damaged once it is placed under Lake Erie? This is highly unlikely. The cables will be placed safely and securely beneath the lake bed. In the unlikely event that the cable is damaged, the system can identify the location and shut down within fractions of a second. Protocols are in place at both converter stations to ensure safety. What is high voltage direct current transmission? High voltage direct current transmission uses direct current to transmit electricity in contrast with the more common alternating current, or AC systems. HVDC systems are often built as an overlay to a robust AC system or for unique circumstances. HVDC transmission lines are especially appropriate for underwater applications. They have a long record of reliable performance around the world. As an analogy, an AC line is like a highway with multiple interconnections to the regional grid that act as on and off ramps.
Ms. Jasek,
yes?
if I can interject just for a second, I do apologize. Members, unfortunately, once again, for the second meeting in a row, I am going to unfortunately have to excuse the witnesses. It looks as though this is going to go on for quite some time, and I do not want although the witnesses give us their very valuable time today, which we all truly appreciate, I don't want to take more time that you'll be just staring at a camera listening to a debate. So with that, I want to give my sincere appreciation to all the witnesses. It was a very robust and great discussion back and forth with many of the interventions by the members, as well as answers by the witnesses. A lot of great points being made. And I, once again, want to express my sincere appreciation to each and every one of you. And with that, I will excuse all of you. And you have a great evening. And hopefully we'll see you back at this committee at some point in time. I thank you very much. Ms. Jasek, you have the floor again.
Oh, thank you so much. To continue, are there any other transmission lines similar to this one? Yes, transmission lines similar to the Lake Erie connector have been in use all over the world for many years. What is the environmental impact of this new transmission line? The technology involved in the line route for the Lake Erie connector was chosen to minimize environmental impact. The line will be buried under the lake bed and at the landing points. The safe and reliable HVDC technology ensures that this energy transmission line has no adverse impact to the environment. From planning our projects, when the proponents have assured us that planning their projects within the best interest of the environment to recycling at their own facilities, they focus on sustainability efforts that set a positive example for other businesses and communities that they serve. And their efforts, the proponents' efforts, have been recognized at the local, state, and federal level. Will there be any overhead transmission lines used? No, the current project plan envisions all of the cable being installed underwater or underground. And for public concerns, will the costs of this transmission project change their utility bill? And so the answer to that was that the costs for this line will be borne by the parties that purchase capacity on the line. And so how long will this transmission cable be in service? And there are many examples of similar types of projects that have been in operation for decades. So there has been complete openness as to what this project is all about and who the major proponents are. Well-established companies with good record. And so it is really an indication, certainly to me, that we really have no need whatsoever to demand any further information in regard to this particular project. And we want this project to go forward. As I said before, the Ontario government, current Conservative Ontario government, is extremely enthusiastic about this project. It needs to go forward, and any delay is extremely unfortunate for electricity consumers in Ontario. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Jacek. Mr. Rogers, you have the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Chair? Thank you,
Yes,
Chair.
I can. You're good to go.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I too want to weigh in on this debate and want to ask questions about what is the opposition putting at risk here and what are the areas that CIB really focused on and the importance of what they're trying to accomplish. I think it's clear to all of us that the motion is meant to harm the CIB's ability to attract private and institutional investments to infrastructure projects. The opposition has complained about CIB allegedly not succeeding so far in crowding in enough private capital. And now they want us to use this motion to make their criticism into a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I want us to understand the areas where the CIB has targeted for getting more infrastructure built. And these are areas where if the opposition succeeds, Canadians will end up with less infrastructure in our country. They will be the losers, and the Canadian institutional capital, like our pension funds, will continue to build projects that benefit citizens of other countries and not our own. So let's look at what CIBC is focusing on. When the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, announced the Canada Infrastructure Bank's $10 billion plan to invest in major infrastructure initiatives to create jobs and strengthen economic growth, the growth plan developed by the CIBC is expected to create 60,000 jobs across the country. And over the next 24 to 36 months, the CIB's plan will build new infrastructure that connects more households and small businesses to high-speed internet, strengthen Canadian agriculture, and help build a low-carbon economy. And these investments will help Canadians get back to work. And one of the defining characteristics of the CIB is to invest in projects in a manner that attracts private and institutional capital, now and in the future. In this way, every dollar of public investment has maximum impact. In delivering this plan, the CIB will also work in closer cooperation with provinces, territories, municipalities, and Indigenous communities across the entire country.
Mr. Rogers, can I just interject for a second? Apparently there's a problem with interpretation. Mr. Clerk?
Yeah, I believe it's a connectivity or sound issue with Mr. Rogers' connection. The sound quality was too poor for them to provide interpretation. So we may have to perhaps go to a different speaker and come back because they aren't able to provide interpretation right now. And we have to be able to provide interpretation.
And did you want to do a sound check, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, why don't we do a sound check, Mr. Rogers? From your end, you have everything hooked up proper. Do you have your mic on in terms of the bottom box? To me, you sound fine. So I'm not sure what the problem is. You're coming across loud and clear from my end, but apparently the interpreters can't hear. They're having some problems. So just making sure that your equipment on your side is all hooked up okay.
Yeah, it is, and as it was previously. So I'm not sure if the sound, for some reason, is not coming through, Mr. Clerk.
No, it just appears they're not getting a great signal. It may be a connectivity issue on your cellular network.
Okay.
I guess it keeps dropping out a little bit, and it's just not quite good enough for them to provide interpretation at this time.
And perhaps it's something to do with the fact that we had a major power outage today, and I'm not so sure if that might have impacted the system here that's run by Bell Alliance.
You could use some investments in resilient infrastructure, it sounds like, Mr. Rogers.
What we're going to do is, Mr. Rogers, why don't you log off and log back on. I'm going to go over to Mr. Alcuri, and he'll take up some time here. And if you want to log off, log back on, and I'll come back to you.
Oh, well, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And Mr. Alcuri, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's really a surprise for me that I come from the world of commerce, and I can tell you that in all commercial projects, there is always a confidentiality clause, and what our conservative colleagues are asking the infrastructure bank to do is to violate that confidentiality clause. And they are sending a clear signal then to potential investors, both nationally and internationally, not to bother coming to invest in Canada. If you look at it whichever way, what's in the best interest of Canadians here? We have heard witnesses. I can mention the mayor of Sept-Îles, who is decrying the lack of infrastructure projects, the suffering of small towns where citizens leave and they never come back. The presence of such a bank for potential projects in remote areas and small communities is even more necessary at this time. And what our conservative colleagues are doing is saying no to that opportunity. And I would also like to hear from our colleagues, Mr. Duval and Mr. Bachrach, is it in the interest of Canadians to put obstacles in the path of this infrastructure bank, a bank that is working to maintain the good relations between infrastructure and environment. Green infrastructure and green economy working together, that's what will create jobs for Canadians throughout the country from sea to sea. So I can't understand where we're heading with that. And the worst, or the toughest part of such a project is finding funding, and rather than encourage potential investors, we are discouraging them. We're saying don't come to Canada, don't invest in Canada, don't work towards job creation and growing our economy here in Canada. You can't imagine, and here I'm addressing myself to Mr. Duval as a Quebec MP. You cannot all imagine to what extent I was pleased and proud to hear the announcement by the federal and provincial government for $800 million for internet, or for high-speed internet connectivity, and the rural areas were major beneficiaries, and they need that. So what about the RAM project here? The RAM project can create thousands of jobs to boost our economy for Quebecers that have gone through a difficult time during this disastrous and unfortunate pandemic. This is no time for putting obstacles in the paths of investors. Partisanship should not even be at play here. We should all work to encourage the infrastructure bank to keep working, carrying out projects. That's what Canadians want. So for all these reasons, I am not ready to support this motion, and I would ask my colleagues to do the same thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Valkyrie, well done. It is 5:30, members, and I'm going to go on for the next 15 minutes. I'd like to go on as long as we can, but unfortunately, Heritage has the resources at 6:30, and they're into clause by clause for C10. So we're looking at a 5:45 shutdown. So just want to give everybody a heads up on that. I now have Mr. Iacono. Mr. Iacono, you have the floor. Mr. Alcuri, if you can drop your hand there, please. And Mr. Iacono, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not surprising then that this motion was put forward by Conservatives before the last elections. They made it known that as far as infrastructure, they wanted to slash and cut and not build. The elections platform for the Conservatives in 2019, they made promises of $80 billion to come from cuts and delays in infrastructure projects from one seat to the other. Conservative politicians say they are for the people, but far from being for the people, they are rather slashing programs and services on which Canadians rely. So it's really not that surprising. That's what Conservatives do best. The former Conservative leader, Conservatives such as Doug Ford, have opposed our infrastructure investments at every stage. The empty promises of Conservatives meant that infrastructure projects would be delayed or cut all across Canada. Let's get one thing clear. Conservatives will not tell Canadians what crucial projects in terms of water, electricity would be abandoned to allow them to fund the tax reductions, or the tax cuts they promise the rich. You don't have to take us at our word. Just look at what Doug Ford has done in Ontario. By the admission of the same Ford government, they have missed 2 years of construction. They promoted slogans seeking political victories rather than trying to get projects going. The funding offered by our government was available from day one. The Conservatives' infrastructure proposal was just a copy or reminder of our own commitment to build strong collectivities, communities. And these cuts by the Conservatives hurt, and our families in Canada will be affected by their plans. Contrary to the failure of the platform of the former Conservative leader, we think that investments should continue in infrastructure. We don't need cuts. Those infrastructure are essential for our ambition and vision for a more prosperous Canada. We are implementing this belief by investing in different provincial projects. For example, the funding of a project like the Réseau Express Metropolitain, it would put a good number of, it would allow a lot of Quebecers to quickly get to work, but they can do so knowing that their choice, that this choice is good for the environment also. We should remind people of these projects. To achieve the Réseau Express Metropolitain, a commitment of $28 billion has been promised. The RAM will have new automated networks serving the entire greater metropolitan area, 26 stations, over 67 kilometers, and this will almost double the current distance of the Metro, 71 kilometers. The RAM is the biggest public transport project undertaken in Quebec over the past 50 years. This network will slowly be operated between 2022 and 2023. The investment in the Canada Infrastructure Bank has the following instruments. About 1% of the rate of interest. It would increase to 3% over 15 years, and we will cover some of the risk involved in construction and launching of the projects. Projects such as RAM, besides the number of jobs created, the benefits for Quebec businesses and workers, it will represent about $2 billion in salaries paid in Quebec and over $4 billion in local content. That's 65% of the value of the project. The projects will involve different specialists, engineers, architects, automated systems experts, electricians, mechanics, a whole slew of them. My community in Alfred Verlan has a lot of talented workers. Thanks to the RAM construction project, could exercise their experience and know-how. Beyond the Greater Montreal area, in terms of mobility, this project will revitalize the regional economy. In the long run, this RAM project, supported by the Canada Infrastructure Bank, will support hundreds of families in our region. Beyond creating jobs and wealth, the RAM will boost the creation of an excellent hub and automated transport. Maintaining a system that is at the cutting edge of technology would contribute to ensure that there are permanent quality jobs and also help build Quebec know-how. This being said, we shouldn't forget to point out some of the ecological advantages of this project. These investments will boost the sustainable development and the reduction in greenhouse gas. Adjustments have been made to reduce the environmental footprint. When you're talking about this RAM project, there will be a station at the Trudeau Montreal International Airport, and there will be a new rail link to connect a new light rail system connecting to the RAM. So the investment of the CIB in this project added to previous investments of $1.3 billion in the RAM. So obviously, a RAM station that's accessible will be very beneficial to the public. It will allow quick and practical service going towards the airport, whether it's local road transport, and taking into account the weather conditions. Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Monsieur le Président.
Yes, I'm just intervening based on my colleagues, what is saying. When we take a speech and we're discussing a motion, we have to stay within the subject. I don't think that a full description of the RAM and the Montreal underground system has any link with what we are debating currently.
I'll just ask all members to try and stay within the realm of the amendment to the motion, and we all have to remember that we are discussing the amendment to the motion presented by Mr. Scheer, who I don't see on the call anymore. Oh, there he is. Okay, good. He is still there. So, Mr. Iacono, the floor is back to you.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think it's important to demonstrate that this project will be very beneficial to Quebec. As you are a Quebec member of parliament, you should feel quite interested in that. And everything else relating to the port of Montreal, you know the connection between the RAM and the Montreal port. But I will move forward since you say you're not interested in this. The investments made by our government to support the infrastructure through the Canada Infrastructure Bank does make a difference in our Canadian communities through projects that revitalize or boost the mobility of Canadians, and also it's good for Canada's, it boosts Canada's image. So our colleagues from the NDP and the Bloc Québécois, by opposing this, they are putting partisanship ahead of the interests of Quebecers and Canadians. And I think they will be doing certain harm to the economic recovery of our Belle Province. Thanks to the investments of the Canada Investment Bank, the mayor of Quebec, Régis Labaume, will retire with a feeling of satisfaction that the RAM project will be delivered. Imagine, Régis Labaume, what satisfaction will our colleagues from the bloc get out of that if this project collapsed because of partisanship? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Iacono, I'm now going to go back to Mr. Rogers. Let's see how your mic is. Why don't we do a quick
Mr.
sound
Chair,
check?
yeah.
Yeah, why don't we just do a quick...
I can do a quick sound check here and see if that's any better for the interpreters. Mr. Clark?
Mr. Clerk, he's doing a sound check right now. How's that sound for the interpreters?
Is that better? Are they hearing me better for the interpretation?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for some feedback from the interpreters on that. So
okay.
Just bear with me a moment. I'm told you're still cutting in and out, but
really?
yeah, but I guess they
Oh.
they can try to work with it. Sorry.
Okay, we're gonna try and work with it, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Clerk, enter the interpretation. If it's that much of a problem, we can't get interpretation. Please let me know immediately.
So, Mr. Chair.
Hold on, Mr. Rogers.
Sorry.
So, because I don't want Mr. Barroso to or others that expect in French to be impeded upon. So,
Yeah.
with all due respect to our members, if you can let me know right away. Mr. Rogers, go ahead. You have the floor.
Me to restart my comments because interpretation was a problem, so I could start from the beginning if you wish.
Go ahead, and we have 3 minutes left before I suspend. Thank you.
Okay. Well, as I was saying, you know what is being put at risk here by the opposition with this motion, and what are the areas that the CIB is focused on. And as I was saying, it's clear to us that the CIB's ability to attract private and institutional investments to infrastructure projects. The opposition has complained about the CIB allegedly not succeeding so far in crowding in enough private capital. And now they want us to use this motion to make their criticism into a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I want us to understand the areas where the CIBC has targeted for getting more infrastructure built. And these are the areas where, if the opposition succeeds, they end up with less infrastructure in our country. And Canadian institutional capital, like our pension funds, will continue to build projects elsewhere. Benefits that would come to our country will now be somewhere else. And so let's look at what the CIBC is focusing on. When the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, announced the Canadian Infrastructure Bank's $10 billion plan to invest in major infrastructure initiatives to create jobs and strengthen economic growth, the growth plan developed by the CIBC is expected to create 60,000 jobs. 60,000 jobs across the country. And over the next 24 to 36 months, the CIB's plan will build new infrastructure that connects more households and
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
More small businesses to high speed.
Go ahead, Ms. Kuzi, point of order. Excuse me, Mr. Rogers. Go ahead, Ms. Kuzi, point of order.
Yes, no, I see we have gone, are we encroaching upon the time within 1 minute where we must conclude our meeting for the next meeting spot. And as such, I wanted to make a motion to adjourn if it is in order that I do unfortunately interrupt MP Rogers to do so.
I do have a motion to adjourn. Actually, Ms. Kuzi, I was gonna deal with that at 5:45.
Okay, pardon
so
me then.
a motion is somewhat redundant. And if I can just go back to Mr. Rogers to give him his last minute. Mr. Rogers, go ahead.
So, as I was saying, these investments will help Canadians get back to work. And one of the defining characteristics of the CIB is to invest in projects in a manner that attracts private and institutional capital now and in the future. And in this way, every dollar of public investment has maximum impact. So in delivering this plan, the CIB will also work in close cooperation with provinces and territories and municipalities and Indigenous communities across the country. So given the substantial amount of work already completed, the CIB expects to begin investing in projects before the end of 2020. And Mr. Chair, I know I don't have the time, but I would like to begin highlighting what some of these investments will be. 1.5 billion for agriculture infrastructure, 2 billion for broadband, 1.5 billion for zero emission buses, 2 billion for energy efficient buildings and retrofits, 2 billion for clean energy. And, you know, that leads me to be somewhat surprised by the NDP not supporting this kind of investment. And when we're talking about clean energy and clean buildings and retrofit and so on to combat climate change. And 500 million for project acceleration. So, Mr. Chair, given that you're about to adjourn this meeting, I would want to come back to these comments at some later point to elaborate on each of the items that I just listed.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers, and thank you to all the speakers. We do look forward to this debate continuing on Tuesday. So therefore, I will take this opportunity to suspend this meeting, and we'll see you all on Tuesday. Thank you.